Namaste. I am Gloria Grace, light messenger and spiritual alignment coach. And women entrepreneurs hire me to clear the inner blocks keeping you stuck so you can put yourself first for a change and live the life you want now. And I am so glad to be with you today, and especially if you're new here. This is going to be a treat. I just feel it already. I know, because I'm doing something today that I don't do very often. I'm interviewing not one guest, but two, which is a challenge and fun at the same time. So I want to introduce to you our two guests. We have Helen Lim, who is a holistic health coach, and J.R. Cimatu, who is an awakening coach. And they together host their own podcast, which is called Awakened, Now What? On Spotify. And their podcast aims to illuminate your spiritual awakening and ascension. And I think that is such a wonderful, wonderful topic, right up my alley. And that's why I knew I had to have you two on the show today. So I always like to start off by asking our guests sort of their journey, what brought them to be doing the work that they're doing today. So I'll ask you, what prompted the two of you to decide to host a podcast together?
Helen?
Who's going to go first?
Okay.
Helen. It looked like JR was wanting you to go first. So Helen, take it.
All right, I'll take it. So I have been a fan of podcasts, and I've always noticed people's voices. And JR sent me a recording session that he had with a galactic historian, Andrew Bartas, if the audience recognizes that name. And when I heard JR's voice, I was like, JR, you have a great podcast voice. Have you ever thought about podcasting? And then he asked me back and was like, why don't we do one together? And interestingly enough, this came out after we'd already been friends for like about a year, but we didn't know that we were both on the more spiritual side. Because we knew each other through a guy I was dating at the time. So it was more like hanging out, enjoying the weekends together. But once we found out we were both spiritually inclined, then we started having other types of conversations. And that's kind of how the spiritual focus of our podcast was born. What about your side, JR? What do you think?
Yeah, no, you put it perfectly. So when I was going through my awakening, it was about 3 or 4 years into it. I asked myself, what now? Now what? What do we do? What do I do? Hence the name of our podcast. And I just kept searching for something to channel these new frequencies, channel these new energies into something helpful for the betterment of humanity. And, I toyed around with writing a book. I started a business. I wanted to become an awakening coach, but there was something missing. And when Helen said, "Hey, let's start a podcast," I was like, "Yes, that's it. This is a vehicle for both of our voices to, have spark a conversation, spark everyone's curiosity about spirituality." And so that's what we've been doing now for 2 years, and we're having so much fun doing it. We've had so many amazing guests on the show, and it's grown exponentially. And there's no looking back now. We're having a blast.
I love that. And I know the feeling because I love doing this podcast. I'm into my 4th year now, and I'm quite content to keep rolling for a while because I get to meet interesting people like yourself. And I even do my own solo episodes where I get to talk about what's on my mind, which is fun as well. And I want to get back to something here because I know there are people, I would hope most of the people who are listening to this podcast probably have some idea of what a spiritual awakening is, but maybe somebody has come onto the show for the first time and they've got no clue. They were just intrigued. Can you describe what was your experience? Let's go with that. Maybe Jared, because you mentioned it first. How did you know you were having a spiritual awakening? What did it look like?
So it is, I describe it to all of my clients too, like this. It's the moment where you have accessed a higher awareness of your inner connection to all that is. Now, let's go deeper into that. Throughout my whole life, up until I was 28, 29, I always thought I was separate. Like I'm in this body. Everyone else is living their own life. I'm separate from the puzzle. I'm a small piece of the puzzle in this gigantic multiverse. And it was that moment where I endured a traumatic event of a breakup. And one can undergo an awakening in many different ways. Mine was through a breakup. And it was a moment where I realized, wow, I'm connected to everything. God is consciousness. God is the experience. We are having an individualized, fractalized experience of the whole, while this whole separation is an illusion. And once I realized that deep inner knowingness, it changed my life. It was a huge transformation. That's what it was for me. Mm-hmm. And now it's about, how do I approach life with that knowingness? How do I create a business? How do I create relationships? How do I create friendships? How do I, try to live in this 3D world, working in a 3D job while having the access to these higher frequencies? So that was kind of, a struggle for me at first, but I've gotten the hang of it so far, it seems.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that's the case. So how about for you, Helen?
Similar to JR, I also had a breakup that was a catalyst, because we were together 7 years. So at that point, I thought we were going to get married, and it would be, I barely bought into the programming of happily ever after. So that shook me up a lot, and I just started to question. And I think I understood the connection of all of us more when I started my yoga journey, because there was a moment at the top of a yoga mat where I was just like divinely led. Intuition is just breadcrumbs. We don't get the whole story, because this human form couldn't take the whole story, right? So that led me to be like, okay, go to yoga teacher training. And then there I was able to experience Reiki. And I think a pinnacle too, though, that I would note is doing plant medicines and frog medicines, and during an ayahuasca retreat, which then I truly understood the spiritual nature of consciousness, of all of us being connected. And so awakenings are always happening, I think, if we're paying attention.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that, and I think I've heard this before too, that sometimes it does take some sort of catalyst, like, something traumatic that may happen. And I think it also, just to let listeners and viewers know, it doesn't necessarily have to be that either. I think right. There are definitely cases where people just, for whatever reason, just wake up. And so don't think that you have to go through something like a breakup or a death in the family or divorce or whatever. What challenges have you run into, though? Because I know for me, it's not necessarily an easy path. Once you have come to this realization, especially if you're dealing with people who aren't awake, shall we say. So how have you experienced that at all? Either one of you.
I like Helen. I'll Helen take this one first.
Okay. I'm kind of thinking, but it's definitely a challenge, because there's just like being seen as like woo-woo was something I definitely needed to grow out of, or even like a big weirdo. And I know I sidestepped that challenge by doubling down on how much self-love I gave myself, because the more I accept myself, right, the more acceptance I can experience in the world and through other people. Part of it was clamming up and not talking about that part of myself. Like, for example, JR and I didn't know we had that similarity until a year later. And then part of it is like gauging, when you meet new people or are making relationships, who would talk about that when you do introduce a small part of the topic, and see how they engage with you. So it's a learning curve. I would say that for sure. I'm not trying to make it sound easy. It has its challenges, but worthy challenges for growth. Yeah. JR?
Wow. That's perfectly said, Helen. Yeah. I mean, me along the same lines, it was learning how to communicate with the friends that I currently had and the family that I currently had, because I was just, I mean, the knowledge that I attained through just learning and reading more into spirituality. Like, for instance, I was learning more about galactics and aliens, and extraterrestrial beings, and how they played a heavy hand in our evolution, the human evolution. And so much of it was so profound and so complicated and so intricate that, trying to live my daily life, I'm like, how? Having this knowledge of these extraterrestrial beings, or these extra frequencies, these higher frequencies, how do I go on living knowing this is okay? And so it was really trying to navigate the relationships I had around me when my head was just nowhere near having the basic conversations that everyone has every day. So that was definitely a challenge. And I mean, still is a challenge today. Sometimes, and I go to all my friends, I can't talk about everything that I know, because I know it's not in their wheelhouse. I know that it's not something for them right now, and it's not within their awareness. And so, yeah, like Helen, it's a challenge, but um, you know, it's learning how to deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
What advice would you have for someone who feels like they are getting that? They are stepping into this path and they are starting to awaken, and maybe are running into, wondering, how much should I say, or what can I expect? What advice would you have for someone?
I would say, I mean, me and Helen talk about this a lot, but trust your gut. Trust your gut. You don't have to divulge all of the information all the time to everyone. Learn to have boundaries with yourself. Know what to say and when to say it. Trust your gut. Trust your intuition. It's always guiding you. It's always leading you. And also, if they're just starting out on this journey, be patient. Just to stay patient. Keep learning. Keep that curiosity in the back of your mind. Whatever you're pulled to, whatever resource you're pulled to, go with it, because that will lead you to 10 different resources. And those 10 different resources will lead you to 20 more different resources. And then integrate. I think the proper thing, like when I was going through my awakening in the first 2 years, I didn't know what integration meant. I didn't know how to properly integrate. And I was learning and learning and learning. And I endured what they call as a spiritual burnout, where I couldn't read a book anymore. I couldn't learn anything anymore. My nervous system was fried. So yeah, be patient, integrate, and be gentle with yourself. This is a very, very delicate time for you as a being, as a soul. You're continuing to, you're a sponge. Just soak up all the information and be gentle with yourself.
Wise advice. For sure. Do you have anything else to add on that, Helen? What did you think?
I think I would add, I really like the patience part, because I do think a lot of the times we want to like zip through whatever uncomfortable feeling, but part of being spiritually awake is knowing that every time you're uncomfortable, there's something happening, like some sort of metamorphosis is happening or transformation happening. So like if the discomfort happens, like also be patient with that. And if you're seeking to reach out to others, maybe see how you can give what you're seeking from others to yourself. It's just another form of self-mastery, because we can always give it to ourselves, or call on spirit, call on your angels. There's always people who do understand. It doesn't just have to be the people that you're interacting with that already, your friends and your family, the network that you have. You can start building a relationship with your angels and spirit.
Yeah, I like that. And I will say, I do agree with you about listening to the intuition, and really, the more you do that, I believe the easier it does get, number one, that you can start really doing that. And it will take you down some interesting roads, because that just happened to me like last week, where the phrase, I think it was mystic tantra or something popped into
Mhm.
my head. And so I Googled it, and it's like, oh, well, someone had written a book about the tantric mysticism of Tibet. And I was like, okay.
Oh,
So I ordered the book, and I'm already just like, I think a chapter and a half in and going, oh yeah, this is definitely what I want to learn. This is so cool. So it's so amazing when things like that start to happen and that you can really lean into.
Yeah.
What is, I asked about your challenge, but what has been either your favorite thing or the biggest benefit perhaps that you've seen in going through your own spiritual awakenings?
Mm.
There's so many gifts, so many awesome things. I mean, I think this podcast and friendship with JR is one of them. It's so aligned, and Spirit keeps giving us little nods of that we're on the right path. And the presence now, I guess if I had to choose a top priority, the presence I have now, which makes for a better connection between me and my loved ones, and just how much more uplifted I feel to dream bigger, to do more of the work, the light work, which is the reason I'm here anyway, to help more consciousness awaken.
Like
Yeah,
that.
just to note on me and Helen's connection, like she provides such a grounding energy in our podcast. Sometimes I'm all over the place, and Helen knows this. Sometimes my energy is sometimes all over the place in the best way possible, if that makes any sense. But and so she's there to like, hey, let's ground. Let's say we're here for the interview. Let's bring it back in. And so our energy, I mean, it's a perfect balance in that regard. But to piggyback off what she just said, yeah, it's really just giving back to the people that need this, that need to hear this. When I was going through my awakening, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to talk to. I was going through therapy at the time, and I had to quit. I had to, tell my therapist, hey, I can't do this anymore because you can't really help me with what I need. Because what I was going through was, again, out of her awareness. And so I didn't know what to listen to. I didn't listen to any podcasts. And so there was very few people who I did talk to. And the only outlet that I had was learning through reading. And that's all I had. And so for us to provide this podcast to anyone who's going through this process, that alone is gives me enough joy to keep on doing it.
That's good. I love that, because it's so helpful to be able to highlight other people and to talk to other people who are going through something similar. And I was having this thought earlier, and I wanted to remember to come back and ask it. Do you find, because I know what I do in to kind of nurture my relationship, I guess, with my higher self, and the things that are non-negotiables for me that I do. So for instance, like meditation. And I know, Helen, you mentioned that you were involved in yoga. So what are your favorite tools, shall we say spiritual tools maybe, that you use and that help you along the way?
One of mine is breath work. One of my favorite tools. I usually do the Wim Hof breathing method every morning. And for those of you who don't know who Wim Hof is, he's the kind of the crazy guy with the crazy voice who takes cold plunges online and has his breathing technique that regulates the nervous system. And my girlfriend also leads breathwork sessions every Saturday for our friends, and it really just, man, it helps you release stuck energy, and you go into bliss if you're doing it right, and if your breathing is right, you go into bliss about 30 to 40 minutes into it, and it really takes me, after that, it takes me into a deeper meditation had I not done the breath work.
How about you, Helen? What's your go-to?
Yeah, breathwork is super powerful. I'm also big on meditation, and at this point now I've discovered lots of types of meditation. So like applied meditation, which my hypnotherapist friend calls hypnosis recordings, is one. but also like meditation where you have a mantra so that your aura is just filled with that energy of that mantra, or meditation where you allow yourself to be a channel so that you're communicating with your higher self. Meditation is super rich. Yeah, I did talk about yoga, and then nature, just being outside of nature, being with nature. I remember when JR and I went to Huntington Library once, botanical gardens out in LA, and he was like, I'm gonna ground, and he took off his shoes and socks, and he was just walking around in the grass.
I love that because I love being out in nature, and I can remember, well, when I was a kid, I was a Girl Scout, and my favorite thing was going to Girl Scout camp in the summertime and just walking in the woods, or going to a lake. And now I'm fortunate enough that I live in Florida and I get to go to the beach occasionally, and I love to be able to just sit and listen to the waves. And it's definitely a way that I find to be able to get close to my higher power. What is a commonly held belief regarding, let's just say, maybe spirituality in general, that you disagree with?
You have really fun questions.
I know, right?
Let me think a little, take a minute.
Yeah. Commonly held belief, could this be from people within the spiritual community or the grander scale of the collective?
I don't know, either or, whichever
Either
one, I'll let you intuit which one you want to say.
Yeah. So for me, yeah, before my awakening, I wasn't spiritual. I had no sense of spiritual awareness. And so how it's portrayed in the media is that, yeah, like Helen said, we're all woo woo, we're all crazy, we're all tree huggers. When that is, further from the truth. When you awaken, you realize you step into almost like a calmness and a peace, knowing that you have this grander knowledge of how everything works and how everything is. And you realize how everyone else has been living in an insanity. And I was just when I learned that fact, I was so taken aback at how the spiritual community is portrayed in the media. And it part of it saddens me. But then again, compassion creeps in, because then they don't know any better. They don't know any better.
That's for sure. How about you, Helen? Any
yes. Sorry, lost in thought there. But the one I wanted to talk on is more for the people who are already doing the spiritual work, and kind of this tendency I see towards like needing to dig into your trauma, or to like really like, oh, because if I unblock the trauma, then I will get a manifestation, or that kind of thing. I would say to more focus on the vision that you want, whether, Abraham Hicks style, focusing on your feelings of that vision, or the focus of the consciousness being on the higher one, than thinking you need to go and unblock, because naturally, as you're visioning, you're going to live your life and the block will come up and you will have the opportunity to process it. There's no need to really dig, in a sense. Focus on the vision.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't need to create unnecessary angst for yourself, because stuff will come up, and the fact that you are continuing to do things like practice, meditation or breath work or whatever, it makes it so much easier when those things do come up. Because I know I found that I'm able to release things faster, or not hold on to things like I did in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, digging stuff for things seems to be re-traumatizing yourself, right? And that alone will cause another block, which then
that's true. Then you're going down the wrong kind of path you don't want to go down. Yeah. I've loved that you're doing this podcast, and you say that it's taking off, and that gives me hope that the last couple of years have been crazy, and especially with all types of different things. And there just seems to be, I know so many people, well, let's say they're the glass half empty people, and just saying that, seeing so much discourse and disagreements and all of this stuff. And yet at the same time, I feel there seems to be more and more people like us, I'll just say, that seem to be waking up and that are realizing that we are all connected. We are all one. What is your thought about that? And, do you feel hopeful for the future?
Yeah. Before my awakening, honestly, I was just, and not to be self-deprecating at all, but I saw myself, I was just a regular dude. I had zero sense of spirituality, spiritual awareness. I was just working. I was working and dating and working and dating. And so if I can do it, anyone can do it. And again, not to be self-deprecating, but the information that I was turned on to, it was hugely transformational for the better. And for anyone else who was just starting to wake up or who is awakened within the last year, I mean, I salute you. The journey that you're on, it's a hard one. It's a difficult one. But as you will learn, it'll pay off dividends in the long run.
Very good.
Yeah. I am also hopeful. I think that the more us who are awakened focus on the love and keep on awakening, that just ripples out more, really believe in the whole quantum and one ripple effect of work. And that's why we do our podcast too. We know it's going to be out there energetically for the people. And where I'm at now, looking back to who I used to be and that level of consciousness, it's almost necessary. I mean, I know there are souls who are just born awakened, but for those of us whose souls chose the whole spectrum journey, like the contrast really provides just so much more of that grace of where we are at right now. And it's like, I'm trying to think of a way, or trying to feel into a way of speaking to the person at the lower consciousness, because we don't need it to sound all crazy and too much to them, right? Like it's almost as if like we're personal trainers and we're offering you a different set of workout plan that you maybe think is so crazy because nobody else has done it, but try it, like it could be for you.
That was great. What you just said, Helen. Gloria, I'm curious about your awakening.
Oh, yeah. I put together a whole over the last couple of years. I have a Google Drive doc because it was like trying to figure out just how this has happened to me, because there've been so many different aspects of it. I think the earliest thing was probably, and this is going back even like, I think it was 2008 or something, 2007. Somehow I got a hold of Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and read that book and found that interesting. And then 2009, I was, no, actually even before that. See, again, it's interesting. It's like, I've been on this 20-year journey that seems like it only happened the last couple of years. But when I think about it, it's like, I got into participating in Reiki circles around the time that my mom passed in like 2003. And then 2005, I think I got certified as a Reiki practitioner. So it's like there's been it's been a slow process. And then what really accelerated it was my sister when she was diagnosed with cancer in 2015, because I feel like that just became like my traumatic event that happened when I lost her in 2016. And yet it turned out to be the biggest blessing, because it led to me writing a book. It led to me starting this podcast. It led to me stepping into my new role as someone who does light language channeling, sound healing, that
Right.
It's like, looking back at my life 20 years ago, I've been, what are you doing? That's crazy. So it's fascinating that it's been slowly accumulating, and then, like I say, I think the last few years it just has kind of been like, it was like, it's like, I guess I hit the tipping point. You know, what is it, Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book? It was like suddenly that was it, and now it's like no going back for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you stole my question, because that was going to be my next question for you two. Is what are you curious about right now?
That's fun. I've been, on the note of spiritual tools, I'm curious and playing and experimenting with a lot of contemplation. So some part of my practice is incorporating human design and gene keys, and the gene keys really talks about contemplation. And I just caught up with my shamanic energy medicine teacher, and she was talking about how you can further contemplate the 4 directions. And I was just like, okay, this theme of contemplation just keeps coming up. So it's a very fascinating tool to allow to unfold.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, JR?
For me, currently, we just had Andrew Bartzis, the galactic historian, on our season 3 premiere. And right now I'm so he mentioned this. It's building strategy to live in this lifetime while gaining access to communication of all yourselves, past and future, in all dimensions of time, in all realities of time, even in parallel timelines, gaining access of communication to them to build strategy to live a more peaceful and more calm life and happy life in this lifetime. So
Cool.
it's kind of the pinnacle of being multidimensional. And he talks about what his concept of equal co-creation, non-competition, non-hierarchical order. And that means not having any competition across all of your past, present, or future selves.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
definitely raises my curiosity to learn more about that. Very cool. And I love that you mentioned human design, Helen, because I've been exposed to that and learning a little bit more about my human design. And I was started to look into the gene keys, because that seemed like there was even more, at least just learning about how they applied to me was less like, oh yeah, definitely, yeah, I can see that. So yeah, there's so many cool tools, and that's one of the things I love about this, is that I love meeting different people who have all of this different types of knowledge that can help us, and that's the really wonderful thing, is that there's not one way to do things. There are multiple ways, like there's, probably the multiverse. So it's whatever it is meant for you, just trust that you will find your path, because I do believe that we came here for a reason, and we forget when we first come here, unless we're fortunate enough to be one of those lovely awakened children. But some of us takes longer than others. And speaking for me, you all are still relatively young, and so I salute you for waking up sooner than I did. But then again, like I said, I woke up in my 40s. I was just slow. I'm just, had to be a big stretching to get there. I've been enjoying this immensely. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers today?
Everything seems clear. How about you, Helen?
Yeah, it's great. It's been a wonderful recording.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, tell us again about, just to refresh, in case somebody came in midstream here, how they can listen, where they can find your podcast, and all that good stuff to be able to connect with you.
Yeah. So you can watch our podcast on Spotify. It's called Awakened ... Now What? The audio versions are available on all podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all of that. And We have a Discord channel where anyone can find it on our Instagram page at Awaken Now What, where you can join the chat, ask join the community, ask us any questions that you want, ask the community any questions that you want. So all the information you can find there.
Very good. I will make sure to have all of that in the show notes. So if you're listening somewhere and you're driving in your car, don't worry about it. Go back to liveloveengagepodcast.com later and you'll be able to find this episode and get all that information. So thank you again for being with us today. I really appreciate learning more about each of your separate journeys and your journey together, and creating a wonderful space for people to learn about what now, now that they've awakened.
And we really want to thank you, Gloria. You've helped pave the way for us. Before we met, I think a few weeks ago on a Zoom call, and I told you that you were a part of our Dream 100. And for the listeners out there, the Dream 100 is a list of the 100 people that you would like to work with. And we just want to thank you, Gloria. We've worked with you, and we're so happy that we are on your podcast.
Well, thank you so much. That still made my day to know that, wow, I'm on somebody's Dream 100. That was just like so cool. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I keep hitting the silly reaction button on Zoom, and I don't know why. And it's very strange, but oh well. Anyway, thank you again. And I also want to thank all of you for listening and for watching. And I am so happy to bring you these wonderful conversations. And as always, I encourage you to go out now and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.